Hello and welcome back to TNWKS, the Now We Know show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest and by the end we will have learnt something new and hopefully you will too. I'm Zak.
And I'm Buzz.
Have you ever felt that sense of deja vu? Have you ever felt the hairs stick up on the back of your neck? And have you ever felt like somebody has been walking over your grave? That's because in this week's episode we're going to be discussing the simulation hypothesis. If you enjoy the Now We Know Show podcast, support Zak Wylde Productions on Patreon or join our members on YouTube for early access, ad-free content and exclusive episodes.
So Zak, I have got to honestly say I have really been looking forward to this particular episode ever since you brought up the subject of the simulation hypothesis.
Yes.
Okay, that's
it's
a mouthful.
It's a pretty big statement.
It is. But I'm going to really look forward to finding out about what on earth this particular, and can I say conspiracy theory is all about.
Yes. We have discussed about doing more conspiracy theories episodes. Obviously, we have done the classic flat Earth story.
Yep.
And whether or not the moon landings actually happened.
That's correct.
And it's been a while since we've really addressed anything since Secret Society, so I thought, what a good way to kind of round off...
Or get the ball rolling
ball rolling again on the conspiracy theories topics.
Because there are so many out there.
So many.
And this one is a very big one, but possibly one that not many people have actually heard of as a conspiracy theory. But it certainly is, because there are people out there that believe it's true. Anyway, before you tell us any more, because I'm really chomping at the bit, we mustn't forget we have our weekly segment,
Weird and Wonderful! Okay, so who's got a weird and wonderful story this week?
Well, since you're the one who's brought in the conspiracy theory for this particular episode, I'm the one who's brought in the weird and wonderful. And the weird and wonderful this week is all about something that happened about a week ago, and it's called... can you guess from this? It's the world's second biggest boar.
Now, when you say boar, I'm thinking wild boar, like a pig or something.
Well, that would be weird and wonderful. If it
How
was
do you measure that?
The world's second biggest wild boar. No, it's got nothing to do with wild boar.
It's called boar.
It's called a boar. It's got nothing to do with shotguns.
Okay.
And it's got nothing to do with people who are incredibly... boring. No, the world's second largest boar is a wave.
A wave.
A wave on the sea.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's called a boar, and it appears usually on the spring tides in the Severn Estuary. Okay.
Where's that?
The Severn Estuary is down near to the South Wales and Bristol Channel. So it's where the sea comes into the estuary and then meets the River Severn, which comes all the way down from Tewkesbury.
Right, okay.
Gloucestershire.
Okay.
Okay. What it is you have the high spring tides, and as they come from the sea is obviously comes in and out. Okay, so this is the spring.
That's how the tide works.
That's how the tide works, and so this is the spring tide coming in against the flow of the River Severn, which is coming out. Okay. So you've been over the Severn Bridge.
I have.
Okay, so you've been backwards and forwards to South Wales from England. So where the sea comes into the estuary in that swelling spring tide, because it's a much higher tide, it suddenly meets the River Severn, which is coming out into the estuary, and the estuary itself becomes very shallow, and also it suddenly goes from being wide to very narrow down into the river.
And what does that actually
mean?
It means? What's the result?
The result is that this big high spring tide comes in, it gets bottlenecked, and it suddenly creates a big wave in front of it, which starts heading upriver against the flow of the river.
So this is just like a completely natural,
it's a natural
event.
And it only happens at these high tides. And what happens is becomes so popular is because people wait for it to come in, and when this huge wave, because this wave, I think the record was in 1966, which was about 2.8, nearly 3 metres tall, this wave.
It's a pretty big wave.
So they all wait there in the estuary for this wave to come in.
Yeah.
I mean, a massive body of water, and they're all on their surfboards. And nowadays, I've seen paddle boarders as well, and canoeists. And then this wave hits, and they basically surf it for like up to I think the world record was about 7.5 miles upstream, just on this one wave.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
And it said that it churns up a lot of mud and it's a bit messy. It's not
like a nice Hawaiian wave.
Not a Hawaiian wave, no, but it's just one of those things that's got to be done. So you get like a massive load of people in a big long line all surfing this wave.
And it's just the one wave that comes in.
Comes in, yes, as the tide comes in, and then goes out, and then it will happen again, but they measure it by stars. So last week's one was known as a 5-star bore.
Okay.
Because it was like the best you could get.
To all those surfers out there.
And as the weeks come on with the spring tide, they'll go. So they're expecting a 4-star bore, and then it'll peter out. Okay. But there you go. So if you ever fancy surfing for 7 odd miles upstream, River Severn, and the world's second, I don't know what the first is. I didn't look that up actually, but the world's second best bore. Ta-da! That was my weird and wonderful. Now, tell us all about the simulation hypotheses.
Okay.
That's what I want to know.
Okay.
What is this conspiracy theory?
So, simulation hypotheses, or simulation theory, is the proposal that our perceived reality is a powerful computer simulation.
Okay.
Possibly created by a higher being. The theory assumes that either everything we know of and that exists is simulated, or that the world we know of is simulated. Okay,
so we're talking kind of what everybody would suddenly jump to is the Matrix.
The Matrix, yes, that's a very popular kind of
but the
representation
thing is,
of this.
It's a conspiracy theory because just like with the flat Earth, there's people out there that do completely believe 100% that it is real.
So this theory was initially proposed by a person called Nick Bostrom, and it was presented as not merely philosophical speculation, but an empirical claim with quantifiable possibilities. This obviously resulted in a lot of criticism by the scientific world and has been described as a pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience, or poppycock.
Poppycock.
Yes.
Yeah, that works.
But the problem is that when you have something that can be, and we're going to be discussing this whole theory, but that is if you like fantasy. The problem is it then bleeds itself into the delusional politics that bleeds itself into the belief that existence itself is kind of like merely a mirage. And of course, if that's the case and people start believing it, and you have somebody who really believes it, then when you speak to somebody like that, they're just going to come back at you and say something along the lines of, well, that's just what they want you to think.
Well, I think the big question is, if we were living in a simulation, how would we know?
Right. Okay. First of all, I would say that you've got to, in order to be in a simulation, you've got to see glitches in it. I would imagine you've got to see things.
This is where a lot of the reasoning comes in. It's when people have given examples as glitches in the Matrix. People use that as a term, glitches in the Matrix.
Okay, so let's put it this way: if we were playing a game, a computer game, because that's simplifying it if you like. But if we are meant to be, as we're standing here talking to each other, doing this podcast, we are doing this within a simulation. You mentioned some higher intelligence.
A higher being that obviously would have a purpose for
creating that. Now, okay, so if we then bring it down to what we are familiar with, where you're playing a computer game and you're playing something like I don't know, a popular one called Skyrim, which is like it's a whole world, isn't it?
Essentially,
you can pretty much explore.
A free roam. It's a free roam game.
Would another one be, which I haven't played, but what's that one with the cars?
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto, that's it. It's a really popular one. So people can basically go and roam freely around these things, interact with things, and then you have characters in it which are NPCs, non-playable characters, and they have set responses and things, and that compared to what we're calling real life, but we're discussing here and now whether that's a simulation. You can obviously see that if you go up to somebody and you ask them a thing and they give you an answer, and you ask them again and they give you the same answer, and you ask them again and they give you the same answer,
then that would be an indication.
That would be an indication. And of course, within a computer game, you have to be somewhere outside of that to be
playing it
and experiencing.
Well, that brings up the question of whether or not in said simulation, if we were in a simulation, would we be outside of the simulation playing the simulation, or are we ourselves just a collection of ones and zeros that are essentially NPCs, but to a degree so sophisticated that we are in a studio recording a podcast talking about the potential of the world as we know it being a simulation.
Now, that's a good point. I think that's a good point, Zach. But going back to our as we know it computer game, you often see things like somebody will be standing on a rock and their feet have disappeared into the rock. Yeah? Or somebody is you've slain a warrior, they've fallen off a wall and they're just hovering in midair. So
I have a prime example here. It was a game called Rage. It's came out probably over 10 years ago now, and I was playing it on PS3. I threw one of these kind of boomerang things into like an enemy's head. They died, but then they started spinning.
Well, they were spinning.
They were spinning. A dead body was spinning
on the floor,
and then it slowly rose from the ground to the ceiling. I wish I caught it on film. I always remember this. And then they hit the ceiling. They just kept speeding up, and then they completely glitched out, bouncing around the room until they ended up wedged in a wall, sticking out with a leg wiggling.
I'm sorry, that's just... Oh, that is precious.
It was so good.
I tried to equate that to the fact that we're meant to be living in this simulated matrix. I would not necessarily see that if I went down the high street.
Exactly. So that then lends itself to the fact that if we were in a simulation, we're in a simulation that is so advanced that we would notice something like that.
We wouldn't notice anything.
No.
Well, not as something as... Maybe I should use the word as basic as such a huge glitch.
Yeah.
So if there are people, Zach, out there, because you've been doing the research in this, if there are people out there, if there are people out there,
I really put you on the spot there.
You painted a fantastic picture there. If you were a person, one of these conspiracy theorists that are out there wearing your tinfoil hat and covering your windows, everything tinfoil because you're worried that you're being watched and you're in this simulation. Then what glitches, what things have these people observed which kind of like has hit the nail on the head to make them so convinced that the simulation theory is real?
Exactly.
So what are we talking about?
So a very popular example of this is birds.
Okay, birds.
And people often observe birds flying in the sky.
Yep, they do.
But people have suggested that, that's a glitch in the Matrix because they're not actually moving anywhere. It's like they're levitating in the sky.
Right, so if you're talking about... We're talking raptors, surely. Yeah, we're talking... I'm not talking velociraptors.
Or even seabirds.
Okay, seabirds, which, again, they're
just gliding on the wind.
They're gliding on the wind. Well, I'm not an ornithologist, but I think that when you have a seabird like a gull that is gliding on the updraft from cliffs, etc., is different from, say, a bird of prey which is hovering, as we call it hovering, to see if it can spot some prey, because they're not actually hovering, they are actually flying forwards, but they're flying against the wind at the same speed as the wind is coming at them, so they basically stop dead. They can't actually hover.
It's like observing a hawk flapping its wings but not moving anywhere. And people have said, "Oh no, look at that bird! It's stuck in the Matrix. It's in a glitch.
And then it suddenly
it's
flies
glitching,
off."
And then it flies off.
Right, well that's not quite how hawks work.
But that's how it's used as an example.
Right. So so I can see somebody who maybe doesn't understand how a hawk uses wind in order to simulate hovering. They're just flying into the wind and staying in the same position, and they move into another position and doing the same thing and move. So to somebody who just has no concept of that, That must look...
Of the physics behind
that must seem
that.
quite odd.
Yeah.
Have you got any other examples?
Another one, sticking with the sky, is planes.
Okay.
So, some people believe that it's physically impossible for a plane to be moving so slow.
What, you mean like a jumbo jet?
Yeah, to be so moving so slow,
but being so big.
And moving in the sky.
Yeah, I think I've heard this before, that they seem to move incredibly slowly when you observe them.
Yeah.
For what weight they must be.
Yeah.
To be able to stay in the sky.
And again, this does kind of tiptoe along the lines of other conspiracy theories about whether or not things we see in the sky are actually real.
Right. I mean,
It goes back to flat Earth again on that.
I did see a
with, like,
short...
it's all CGI.
Yeah, I did see a short video on that where, this must be a couple of years ago because you've just reminded me, where somebody was filming a jetliner, an airliner. It was in the distance, going across above some trees, and it did seem to be going very slowly. Meanwhile, near to the person who's filming, you had a little biplane, just a normal little, two-man plane, which was then cutting across the same direction as the airliner, but much faster.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, how can this little plane going so fast be? How can the big one not be?
Yeah.
How can it stay in the air? And it's like, yeah, but it's so far away from you in consideration. You're not taking consideration.
It's also lift.
Yeah.
It's the amount of energy from those engines pushing it forward against the wind, allowing it to.
Plus, it's several miles further away.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as it's further away, it looks like it's covering a shorter distance as it's moving, as to something that's close to you and zipping straight past.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got some things, and you mentioned in your intro about like that feeling of somebody's walked over your grave.
Yeah, that was something I kind of wanted to look at because to equate it to this, obviously simulations, rendering, stuff like that happens, and that could be like a glitch in the matrix as kind of us kind of catching up with ourselves almost.
Right. So
a form of buffering.
Well, it's interesting because it doesn't matter kind of who you are, what society you're from, whereabouts in the world you're from.
No.
I think everybody sometimes gets that shiver down your spine.
And
people turn around, I don't know, maybe they've got different...
Or you get that suddenly cold feeling of somebody's walked over your grave.
Well,
if that was actually a glitch in the matrix? What was if that was like a computerized...
Restart for a split second.
Something along those lines.
Or some new data being uploaded.
Exactly. Yeah, an update. Yeah, exactly.
Like well, I dare
say one of these proposed things.
I dare say that people throughout the world probably have different... We in the UK call it, I just felt somebody walk over my grave.
Yeah.
I'd be interested if people listening to this can come back to us if they know exactly what we're talking about and they have a different term for it. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
That you can't get this
deja vu.
This involuntary shiver. Yeah, now that's an interesting one because everybody
along the same lines.
Has moments of deja vu.
You can't explain it. You cannot explain it.
Like,
you feel like, I've been here before. I've seen this before. I've done this before.
Yes, I've certainly had that where I've been into a place and I've suddenly thought, do you know, I'm sure I have just done this already.
Yeah.
And that's a very strange feeling.
Or you think of something, and then, for instance, if I was walking to my house from here, and I only cognitively catch up with myself when I'm almost there.
Yeah, people get this when they're driving as well. When you're driving along and then suddenly you realise that you suddenly... Hang on a minute, I can't remember last 2 miles that I just drove.
Yeah, you've jumped.
But obviously you've been driving safely, but you seem to have jumped forwards to where you are then. And you have a recollection of something getting to that point.
What? I remember deciding to do this.
I've had that discussion with many, many people.
And now I'm there. I'm starting to do whatever it is that I decided to do. What explains that gap? Is it like just a drop in, like a link, a connection between the physical presence that you are experiencing through your kind of simulated reality? It's like,
okay, well,
that's assuming that we're outside of this simulation controlling the inside of the simulation via our brain or something like that.
Okay. Well,
However, if we're ones and zeros, it could be somebody programming said situation to kind of bridge the gap. I don't know.
I mean, okay. So before we start getting into the very
We are going very deep. We're going very
theoretical
deep.
and the philosophy behind this, other things that you brought up suddenly into my mind are things like those moments where you can't find your car keys. Everybody's done that.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, where have I left my car keys? You search everywhere for your car keys, only to find them exactly where you thought you'd left them in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, so could that be an instance of they've glitched out, your car keys aren't there, and then they reappear there?
Yeah.
Or is it that something within you're just not seeing where your car keys are? I don't know. I mean, that's all a bit far-fetched to me on that point. But I'm just saying, we all get those moments where we think, you can't find something, and there it is right in front of your face. And there's one other thing you've kind of brought up in my mind, talking about this, and that is people who feel as if they've already lived other lives.
Like a
past life.
Again, to an extent, it could be extended to that deja vu proposal that it's something that you've already done, but is it something you've already done, or is it something you have previously been that's already done that?
So you might have...
And it's like a recurring memory from a past life.
Okay.
Potentially.
Now, time's a funny thing. I do want to do a podcast on time and time travel.
We have been discussing that for a while.
I'm going to do one of those, and this kind of bumps into that in a kind of a way, because obviously we live in the now.
We did briefly explore this on the Mindfulness podcast.
With us standing here together, this is the now. This is what you experience. You only experience the now. The past has gone.
The now of this is going to be experienced in the future as a recording of the now.
Yep.
When it's listened to.
But the past, once that's gone, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
No.
That's just only exists in your memories.
Exactly.
And the future, well, technically, that doesn't exist either.
Because it hasn't happened yet.
However, that's a discussion for another day. The reason I bring it up is because if you are dealing with a simulation, are we therefore all meant to be playing out a simulation which is free roaming? Or is it a simulation
or is it rendering ahead of us?
Yeah, or is it something that's already predestined? If you see what I mean.
I get what you mean, yeah.
So, if you could... We had a situation the other day where we watched a movie and there was a hint of time travel in it. And
we can say the movie.
Okay, it was The Dial of Destiny.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
They find an Archimedes' tomb.
Yep.
Spoilers for those people who haven't seen this. But they find Archimedes' tomb, and his skeleton is wearing a watch.
From modern day.
From the modern day, which would have been
1960s.
That watch belonging to a Nazi who, further on in the movie, they find a portal which takes them back in time, and that Nazi gets killed, and Archimedes
gets his
watch. And so that leads to the point of saying that, therefore, if the watch then is in the past...
Yeah. In the future...
It's already in the
having
future.
not got to the past yet.
Yeah, it's in the future without getting back to the past.
It's preordained that sequence of events is going to happen.
And if that's the case, does that therefore hint towards all events, whatever you think you're doing of free will...
Isn't actually free will.
It's just going to happen.
Yeah. Free will is a construct.
A construct, just a thing that we like to believe that we have.
Cause and effect is already determined.
Yeah.
It's not... The decision process isn't a decision process. It's merely a sequence of events playing out.
Well, let's put it this way. If you could travel into the future, which technically... we'll deal with this in the time travel one, but if you could travel into the future, which technically you can, that would mean that the future events... in order to travel into the future, have already happened to be able to arrive in the future. You see? So, therefore...
So, yeah.
So, that hints towards the fact that everything you do is already preordained.
Yeah.
Or is it?
That's the thing.
So, if we are in this simulation that you're suggesting, well, not you're suggesting, but the people who believe in this conspiracy theory, in this simulation hypothesis, therefore, how are people experiencing it? Is this one big free roaming computer game.
Yeah, it is essentially the map of the game. Is that the world, Earth as we know it? Does it extend beyond that? Is it the universe itself, perceived reality, is all the simulation, or is it?
Well, if you play a game like...
Is it to make it a functional reality, much like games? It's a rendered environment that renders ahead of where you're going.
Well, yeah, I see what you mean. So, for example, if I wanted to go to Egypt, when I go to the airport, I get on a plane and I fly to Egypt and I land in Egypt, that is rendering ahead of me as I go.
And behind you is basically freeing up
space.
Space to render ahead of you. Right.
So this brings me... This is very good. I'm loving this because this is a great conversation. So would that suggest... This is one. Are we all characters within this simulation? Or, now you've got to bear with me on this, I'm looking at you through my eyes, okay?
Yeah. And I'm looking at you through my eyes.
Well, I assume.
Well, exactly.
Am I the entity which is...
Playing the game.
Playing the game. This whole game that's in front of me, this whole world which is in front of me, you, my son... my wife, my family, my friends, are you all just part of something that I am experiencing as an individual?
Yeah.
And you guys are just all characters within that.
NPCs.
But you don't know that because you're just...
Because I'm just an NPC, potentially.
Or, earlier on today, we were at a service station and we were surrounded by probably a couple of hundred people. Is everybody... an entity experiencing...
That would lend itself to the Matrix idea from the film The Matrix, that everyone is in their little pod.
Okay.
From birth, has been in their pod being a battery for the robots.
Right. Okay. So let's go into sci-fi for a minute.
It's whether or not we are actually a physical presence outside of the simulation, or the simulation being controlled by an entity of some descript.
Yeah, like a super AI.
Or are we that literally the characters in a really sophisticated game that we are just being played? When the game is turned off, do we just then not exist?
Well, we wouldn't know.
Exactly.
I mean, that would be a kind of a... I don't really want to look at it from a religious perspective too much, but isn't that what religion has done, regardless of your religion, it's done for centuries, that it suggests that if you put up with all the pain, suffering, whatever of this life, that when you shuffle off your mortal coil, you will then level up.
Yeah.
To something better.
Yeah.
There is something better to look forward to. So if you were having a really shit life, to put it bluntly, don't worry, because eventually
it'll get better.
You're going to level up. And isn't that kind of just peddling that kind of...
Well, I mean, that's very, very much from that
promise
game player perspective where, okay, it's okay that I've died in this game. I'm going to respawn and then keep going until I've defeated this boss.
And then I level up.
Once I've gained enough experience points, I'm going to level up.
So, there you go.
And I'm going to get all these cool things.
So, well, we already spoke about people thinking they've had a past life. Does that mean that if you shuffle off your mortal coil and you then respawn, as in get reborn, reborn?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a little thing.
One thing in the same, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and then you just start from baby facsimile again, but you're meant to be void of all previous knowledge. You're a new template to grow up within their simulation.
Yeah.
But maybe some residual
things
hang around in the back of your program.
As a glitch within the program itself.
Yeah, with some kind of just random memory.
Yeah.
That is
like a ghost memory.
Yeah, well, sometimes obviously if you have a memory card and you format it, it doesn't get rid of the data. All it does is it removes, I think, a couple of noughts and zeros from the data that's on the card, allowing it to be rewritten on. But that data is technically still there. That's why sometimes when people have gone, oh no, I formatted my card, I need to get information off it, and then they can use certain software that can actually access that lost data. So maybe that's it. Maybe one's memory has been wiped, but in the sense of there's still those missing ones and zeros there that sometimes just activate a clouded, shadowed memory of the past.
Well, what wild theory there?
Okay.
I'm just say wild theory that I'm going to now bring up, and that is it equatable that potentially, in that sense, ghosts?
Some people...
Could ghosts be like a ghost kind of memory, one of these glitches in the Matrix that people have seen and experienced? We have talked about ghosts on the podcast before.
We've spoken about ghosts, we've spoken about...
But not from this perspective.
No, and we have spoken about other things which are otherworldly.
Inexplainable events.
And the term has come up where some people are more sensitive, they say, to it. They're more attuned to these things. Interesting. Could that be, again, fuel for those believers in that we live in a matrix? You've got to ask yourself, what purpose, though, is this matrix? If we were living in it, what is the purpose of it? Now, this brings us on to the kind of like sci-fi fantasy side of things, because it has been portrayed in many, many different things. We'll just deal with the Matrix, start with that, since that's one that a lot of people know. In that, reality is that people are batteries.
We are fueling the, basically...
supercomputer robots that live in the future. And so they need a power source, because I believe the planet has been ravaged by war. The sunlight has been blotted out by the atmosphere being polluted, and so they need to generate electricity other than solar. And so they breed human beings, and while they're in a pod, creating it, because let's face it, we function off of electricity. That's the basis of it. You know, our brains fire off of digital impulses.
Yeah, and that's what they're tapping into.
So they give each one of these humans in a pod access to this false reality,
this rendered, simulated world
where they live contently or not, but actually they are just being used as a battery until they manage to accidentally break out of that situation, or they die within that situation, then they get flushed out.
Well, that's the thing. It goes on to that extent of it's not going to work for everyone. So they have a certain proportion of the people that are rejects, and that's where it goes in later in the movies, that actually these rejects, they're just controlling them as they are kind of establishing themselves being in their own civilization. That's exactly what the plan is,
because they keep destroying it and then letting it
rebuilding
rebuild again,
which is exactly why Keanu Reeves, Neo, in it is prophesized to be the one to kind of change it all, to rise up. But that's exactly what happens in the second one. He has to decide whether or not to go down the route of total annihilation or to give into the system.
Well, this lead to, in reality, a dangerous precedence when it comes to somebody believing, if they actually, I mean, because people out there believe wholeheartedly in their different gods. Let's face it, there are so many religions on this planet that they all believe are right. So if you've got a room full of people that from all the different religions in this world, they're all going to supposedly be nice to each other.
As is ordained.
As is ordained. But they're all going to look at each other going, well, my religion is the true religion and yours isn't,
So therefore,
inside themselves. So if you've got somebody who truly believe that their god or gods is real in their world, in their mind, without shadow of a doubt, their total conviction it's real. If you have somebody who has total conviction that they are living in a matrix, therefore doesn't that completely remove any responsibility from them? Basically, somebody can go around and say, well, I can do whatever I want,
act however I like,
because the worst case scenario, depending on where I live in the world, I'm going to either end up in prison for the rest of my life or I'm going to get executed. But it doesn't matter, because it's going to stop at some point, and I'm just going to be go again.
Much like a game.
Yes,
where
but isn't that potentially an incredibly dangerous thing?
It's a dangerous idea, yes.
Because if you have somebody or people that believe that, that becomes very much cultist, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you believed in the cult of the simulated theory,
Yeah,
then you could really have problems.
exactly, because action and like consequences have no,
No meaning.
meaning.
No, you can do whatever you like and have no fear of
Repercussions.
because you're just gonna.
Going back to Skyrim again, literally, you steal, I don't know, or basic thing. You first go to a place called Riverwood.
Yep.
There's loads of like wildlife animals wandering around. You hit a chicken, you punch a chicken, for instance.
Punch a chicken. We don't condone punching chickens.
You then get a bounty put on your head,
Right.
and you can get sent to prison.
Okay. Within the game.
Within the game, you get sent to prison.
Mhm.
You can then, once you're in that prison cell, you can either serve the sentence, try and escape, then get killed. The result is the same, whichever way you play it. It's how you play it.
Okay.
So you get respawned and you go again. Right. You've learned, okay, maybe I'm not going to punch that chicken.
So if you take away that fear, in fact, that in a kind of a way, that's very reminiscent of the kind of Viking Norse mythology of the gods, where you have Viking warriors, and they're more than happy to die a glorious death in battle because they know they're going to respawn in Valhalla and live forever, basically feasting and fighting and feasting and fighting. So it takes away the fear. And they've always said the hardest, or the people to fight are people that have no fear of death. And I suppose that's the thing, if you've got that mindset, that you don't care.
Yeah.
And something like this, a conspiracy theory like this, could really get into somebody's head.
Exactly. Because how would you know?
Yeah.
Is there a definitive way of proposing whether or not reality as we know it is real?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a construct? Is it
Okay,
simulated to an extent that we are ones and zeros, or is it we are playing this game as somebody else, but we're just
Okay. Let's
the representation of that person?
Off the cuff, let's kind of put this to the test. Okay. Hold your right hand out.
Oh, okay, I'm holding my right hand out.
Okay. Now, that's your hand, yeah?
It's my hand.
It belongs to you.
Yes.
Does it belong to me?
No,
It belongs
my
to
hand.
you. And what's it connected to?
My arm.
And that belongs to you.
I hope so.
Okay, so your hand and your arm, and they're components of your body.
Yeah.
And your body and all its internal organs, its cells, its blood, its skeletal system, its nervous system, all belong to whom?
Me.
Okay, so where are you?
One would assume in my head.
Right. So you exist in your brain. And let's just see what I just said then. Your brain.
Yeah, not your brain.
No.
But my brain.
But it's your brain. So
yeah.
You are somewhere to own that brain. See what I mean?
I see what you mean.
So where are you?
I'm here.
But if we look at that concept of where we are, the essence that makes us an individual being is, and I don't want to downplay this too much, because human beings are very complex creatures, but we are, in essence, those neurons that are firing off with digital impulses within the brain. It's what our personality is, how we think, how we construct the world around us, how we understand things. Surely that essence, which maybe what people might term as your soul, is you. Because you can literally, everything that you are belongs to you, but where are you to own it? So are you? So are we just an ethereal being that
manifests,
that possesses this vehicle to go through life,
existence, yeah,
within this,
to perceive reality,
and then when this vehicle basically
is
gets
lost,
to the end of its life,
what happens?
Then do you dissipate into the ether?
Do you transfer to something else?
So are you within the vehicle at this present moment in time, or are you observing everything this vehicle is going through from some other place?
Yeah.
Do we visit that place, for example, when we dream? Yeah, because we have dreams, which can be very bizarre at times.
Yeah.
Dream about places you've never been before, never seen before. People. Sometimes it's past memories. Sometimes it's just things that. Is it downloading data from what you've done during that day?
Yeah.
I mean, dreams are another big area of you've got to consider within this theory of
consciousness and reality, and
living within this so-called matrix.
There's got to be a basis behind dreams for them to be something.
It's why would we dream?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, there are days where I don't dream, and there are other days where I might have some absolutely fantastical adventure that seems so real. And sometimes, I don't know if you have this, but you observe yourself from a distance within the dream, but then other times you are within yourself in the dream.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask this question about dreams. And do you ever find yourself with the ability within a dream to essentially stop what's happening, go back, and then replay the sequence of events?
I think
because I do that all the time.
I think I have.
It's like, I didn't like how that turned out. Yeah. I'm now going to go back.
I've had
go back 5 minutes essentially.
I've had situations in dreams where I have thought, no, I don't like what situation I'm in right now, so I'll just walk out the door.
I'm going to go to the past checkpoint
and do something else.
Reload it at the last checkpoint. Yeah.
Interesting. Could this be part of this, as we call it, the
simulation hypothesis?
Yeah. So could it be that all dreams are also connected within this?
Mm.
Now, this is another thing, because people are not in any way all the same. There are people that have mental disabilities, learning difficulties. There are people out there that are literally serial killers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So your brains are kind of like working in different ways. Some people cannot conceive certain things, can't undertake certain tasks. Other people might be really nice people, and potentially always really nice people, but when other people are really vindictive people, have their personality. Is this that they're pre-programmed to be like that?
It goes back to that responsibility thing.
Yeah, some people say, if you grow up in a certain way and brought up, you're going to it's a sort of reflection of your upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not always the case, because there's people that had really bad potential upbringings and gone on to be incredibly successful and incredibly nice people with not a vindictive bone in their bodies to reflect any of the hardship they had in the past.
But does anyone ever address it the other way around?
But there are. I've met people which have, dare I say, kind of been born with the silver spoon in their mouth, where they've had never had any hardship. They've come from a rich family. They've got everything they want, and they are horrible.
Yeah.
And they do horrible things.
They have everything for the world going for them.
Yeah.
And somehow they're still
I met this one
unhappy.
Lad, no names, no petrol, but was the one lad who came from a very well-to-do family, lived in a very well-to-do area, and he was always getting nicked by the police because he was out stealing cars, doing all sorts of, but he was almost like, I don't care because my parents are going to bail me out. So what puts that into his psyche to do that? Is that part of this simulation theory that we're in? This kind of thing. Anyway, it's a huge subject when you start thinking about these things.
Yeah.
If we're going to take this on board as a thing, is it that everybody's pre-programmed? Is it that only one person is observing this at any one time and everybody else is just within their simulation, or are we all experience the simulation in our own ways at the same time, but everything that we do is already destined to happen? Now, let's talk about
free will out the window.
So let's talk about some of those ways it's been basically presented within film and TV. We've mentioned The Matrix. One that comes to mind for me is an old episode of Star Trek Next Generation, where Captain Picard gets hit from a probe. There's an alien probe outside. They discover it. The Enterprise pulls up. There's this probe, and then suddenly he gets hit by a beam of energy and finds himself on a different planet.
Okay.
As a member of a different race of humanoids, and basically goes through living a whole complete life to an old man and then dying. Meanwhile, in Captain Picard's reality, he's still on the deck of the Enterprise, but sparked out on the floor, and they're all trying to revive him because they don't know what's happened. The whole premise behind the story is the alien race had become extinct thousands of years ago, and this probe was a way of them saving their memories of their history and existence, and
their essence.
Their essence, and because he experiences it for what is the duration of the TV program, but he lives a lifetime within that simulation.
Yeah.
Their history is basically preserved within Captain Picard because he's lived the whole life, and that's where he learns to play the whistle. So within that one, because he lives a lifetime there. Yeah. But actually, it's only been like 40 minutes.
And yet somehow within that, again, that's the kind of an echo of that life.
Yep.
Even though it's only taken maybe a couple of hours.
Yep.
Somehow the echo of that life has persisted, and he has gone on to have those echoes in the ability to.
When he comes round, he can still play.
You could never learn the flute in like an hour. Of course not. But in reference to the simulated reality, experience is compounded, and therefore he is given that ability within that time to have learnt to use the flute.
What other ones?
So things that are springing to mind in a similar respects are the Rick and Morty.
Okay, good old Rick and Morty.
There is just a brief scene
right
where they're at a space arcade.
Space arcade.
And Morty goes and plays this game called Roy.
Okay.
He then wakes up as if all his Rick and Morty adventures have been imaginary. That he's been dreaming.
Okay.
He
is Roy.
He is Roy. He is playing Roy.
Okay.
He goes through Roy's life, much as we are now. Okay. We're just going from the day to day. Nothing. No high fantasy. No.
Just
space adventures, just
buying
normal
a house, having a family,
having a job, all these very mundane, boring day-to-day things.
Just day-to-day. It wouldn't necessarily be boring, but I know what you mean.
But in the context of
it's high adventure.
In this context, he's a carpet salesman.
Okay.
So
boring then. Sorry, carpet salesman.
It goes through all this life, the hardship he goes through, with
heartbreak.
Medical conditions and things, heartbreak, things like that. He gets to the end. Oh no, he's fallen over and he trips up and
kills himself.
He falls off a ladder.
Okay.
Then
he wakes up in the arcade.
Morty wakes up in the arcade,
right?
Having experienced an entire lifetime
in minutes.
In minutes.
Ah, right. Okay.
And that you see in that episode, that's obviously really affected him, despite only being for a couple of minutes of just playing a game.
Oh gosh, you've now thrown up the one for me, and that's Red Dwarf.
Oh, which episode?
Isn't it Back to Reality? Is that the one?
Back to Reality, yes.
Yes, where they actually all...
That's a good one.
All of the... So you've got Rimmer, Crichton, Lister, and the cat.
Yeah.
And they wake up out of a machine where they've all been in these separate pods.
Having played the game Red Dwarf.
And the guy who's come to let them out is sort of like going, oh, how far did you get? And he's going, oh.
No wonder you only scored 3%. You must have been playing like twonks.
Did you find the microfilm?
The microdot.
The microdot. It was in Rimmer's swimming certificate, And it's like...
That's a blatant clue, isn't it? How would he have a swimming certificate if he never knew how to swim?
And so they in that one, they suddenly are presented with the reality of the whole of their lives on Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Is a simulation.
Yeah.
And now they're in the reality of, the real reality.
The reality that,
and they discover
been trying to escape,
the cat who is in Red Dwarf is all like
swanky
sophisticated and wearing high fashion is actually Dwayne Dibley.
Dwayne Dibley!
And Rimmer is... just he's like a wino, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's all scruffy and smelly. And you've got Crichton. He's just a traffic warden, isn't he? And then,
Jake Bullet.
And then you've got Lister, who obviously in Red Dwarf is, affectionately I say this, a slob, a layabout, who just loves curry and beer, lager.
Yeah.
And then he finds out that actually he's the head of this dystopian...
He's the voter colonel.
He's the voter colonel. He's in charge.
You change people. You change them from being alive people into being dead people.
That's it. And so he is actually totally the opposite of...
Part of this kind of totalitarianistic society.
Yeah, but it turns out that that's a simulation. And they wait.
The simulation is the simulation of the simulation, which is the reality.
And then they eventually go back to their reality when they're back on Red Dwarf. Oh, my goodness me.
But in that essence, that was actually the effect of a defence mechanism
It was despair squid, wasn't it?
the despair squid.
Yeah.
Which
Where it was, ultimately the idea was to try and get people to kill themselves.
Yeah, as a defensive mechanism.
To stop them from hurting the
Despair squid.
Yeah, but again, it was like, do we know what reality we're in?
Yeah.
How do we tell? So...
Oh, that has just thrown up a big one in my brain.
Go for it.
I'm surprised we didn't mention this before. Total Recall.
Oh gosh, yes, Total Recall. What an
But that's about implanted memories.
Implanted memories where you think you've had a perfect holiday.
Or it's proposed in the film, like, why not have a holiday from yourself?
Exactly. Well, initially it's have a holiday, but a holiday that doesn't have any of the waiting at the airport, you lost luggage.
The perfect holiday.
The perfect holiday. But on top of the perfect holiday, you could pretend in that holiday to be somebody completely different. And why not be a secret agent?
Exactly.
And so he goes, oh, yeah, I'll be a secret agent. But but you get to the point in the movie where you don't know whether he's actually had those memories implanted or whether they were just about to start implanting those memories and then supposedly they blow a memory cap that he's already had. It turns out he is
actually a secret agent.
Or is he? Because are we then watching the simulation or are we watching reality?
Yeah.
And it's always the great thing about that movie is you get to the end of it where he liberates Mars and prior to going under and being anaesthetised to go into the machine to implant the memories, you see images on the screen of things that are
going to happen.
You
see the
Melina,
terraform equipment on Mars.
You see Melina, the lady.
Yeah, that he's had dreams about.
Well, he's already been dreaming. Well, that's the thing, he's been dreaming about her beforehand. So, yes,
I love that movie for that in that sense
because you can watch it again and again and again, and you still wonder.
And you still get to that final note of the film where they're standing on the surface of Mars, and it's like, well, I hope this is really...
Has he been lobotomized in the real world?
Yeah, because again, that argument is proposed within the film. I've been implanted into your memory to try and save you.
To bring you out.
To bring you out of this.
Because you're like...
You have a schizoid embolism.
Yeah, and if you don't...
You will be effectively lobotomized.
So there we go.
That's such a tense moment.
Aha.
Because how on earth would you know?
Well,
how on earth would you know?
You wouldn't. So, which makes me say right now, how do you know you're not in a simulation?
Well, yeah.
A very, very sophisticated simulation, which has certain glitches.
Just thinking of a couple more examples.
Okay.
Obviously, they did revisit the despair squid topic in Red Dwarf in the Back to Earth kind of Series 9. I probably like it more now because it's Blade Runner connections.
Yeah, I remember the Blade Runner sequence, yes.
Unfortunately, that series was rushed a bit.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it didn't have the laugh track that made it kind of funny.
Yeah, they needed the live audience.
But that, in a way, made it more real because it obviously, instead of being a despair squid, it was a happiness squid. So it made them so happy they wanted to live the dream. Yep. They didn't know they were in a simulation and they were so happy. And they got to a point where it's like, we have to kill ourselves to get out of the simulation.
So are we living in a simulation where people always sort of say, they dream that the grass is greener on the other side, but you have to learn the lesson that actually you should be accepting of what you've got?
So, again, another example, Doctor Who episode Extremis. It's Peter Capaldi, season 10, Doctor Who. Now, in that, the simulation is so sophisticated that it's basically copied everyone, pretty much the entire universe, as this almost perfect simulation. And it's so sophisticated that the simulation itself has become self-aware and people are catching on to this fact that something isn't right here.
Okay.
Maybe we are just things in a simulation. Reality as we know isn't real. So therefore they want to get out of the system.
Okay.
And the way it was kind of characterized within it is the Doctor says that imagine you're Super Mario.
Okay.
You go through the Super Mario levels over and over again.
Yep.
You finally catch on to that fact and decide, okay, I don't want to play ball anymore. So it's deleting yourself from the game.
Okay.
So then you don't have a game to play.
Mhm.
Now, the way they kind of explained this within Doctor Who was that if we're all running on this same simulation, this same computer system, we will always think of the same number. If, for instance, we just randomly said a number right now.
Okay, let's do it.
So 3, 2, 1, and we'll say a number between 1 and 20.
Okay, so you're going to say 3, 2, 1, and then we say a number between 1 and 20.
If we say the same number, we're in a simulation.
Okay. Well, then
3, 2, 1,
17.
10. Okay.
Okay.
Again.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, 12.
9.
3, 2, 1, 7.
2.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're safe.
So,
In regards to Doctor Who, I think we're safe. That was actually quite a fun experiment.
it was fun, actually.
Anyway, having realised this, they then delete themselves from the game. So the Hadron Super Collider of all places, they like blow it up and things like that.
So you mentioned Doctor Who. There was
Yeah.
another one, maybe final one that springs to mind, which is kind of different concept, and that was a film called Dark City.
Oh,
where
yeah, of course.
Humans had been taken by aliens to this world where they were playing out certain scenarios. I think it was to kind of like find out what the essence of life is, what the point of life is.
Because they were also using humans as hosts.
Yeah, they were using humans as hosts, and then overnight the city would change. So and the main character in it is like married with a loving family, and then as soon as midnight strikes, they all like fall asleep. And then when he wakes up, the city's changed, and he wakes up where he's suddenly at a murder scene, and he's got blood on his hands.
So in this particular instance, it wouldn't be along
It's not
that digital computerized world. It's more a physical.
So the people were physical in it,
reality, yeah.
but the world around them was being manipulated.
And obviously, they themselves are being manipulated to forget
because
the past.
That's it. But he retained memories of his past.
And again, that's lending itself to suddenly something becoming so sophisticated it becomes self-aware of itself.
Yeah, because he kept saying in his head, they kept going to this beach for a holiday, but every time he tried, he could never get to the beach.
Yeah.
You know, but everybody else was saying, "Oh yeah, you just catch the train, go that way."
Yeah, because he's become so self-aware of this.
But everybody else was ignoring it. And
then he's going through life. Suddenly, things have changed. Yeah. He's remembering the past, being different to what it is.
So that's a different take on.
It is.
If you like,
it is.
This.
But again, that's that idea that there is a something, in this case, aliens, that are creating this construct.
When you started this conversation about this conspiracy theory, you said, you know, is there another higher intelligence controlling everything? And that would be that situation. So anyway, I think it's time we start rounding things up.
Yeah. I'll leave it on this one note that kind of, for me, it kind of got me thinking about this whole simulation.
So we're going to be at this point. We are going to ask each other what we believe in this.
I'll say the story first. So, what initially kicked this up for me was a particular instance where I was hiking with Jack. Yeah. We all love Jack.
We all know Jack.
He's great. And whilst we were hiking, we were in the middle of nowhere, walking down some hills across a pretty open landscape. There was nowhere out in the countryside. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. If somebody was coming, you'd see it coming.
Okay. Now,
walking through this field, we were headed to a road that would lead us further on our adventure. Down this hill, and then out of nowhere, a runner suddenly appears.
So behind you,
behind us, it run directly past us. No prior knowledge. We had just come down that hill. There was no sign of any runner. I was looking. I was observing the whole surroundings. I love looking at the outside and everything.
You're very aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, and then out of nowhere, just come directly past us. This runner.
Yep.
But they're not running in the normal sense.
Okay.
They are not wearing shoes.
Right.
They are holding them in their hands. Who runs holding shoes
in
their hands through a field? Do people do that?
And did you watch him disappear off in the distance?
Yeah, he ran exactly where we were headed. Went through the hedges, across the road, disappeared. Never saw him again on that journey. But it was just a weird thing that we both experienced, and we said, oh, it's a glitch in the Matrix.
Oh, you said that.
That's exactly what we said. And that kind of spurred this idea, and that's why I've kind of been thinking about it ever since then,
Right.
which kind of instigated this podcast.
Okay. So before I ask you whether you think we are or aren't, and I want you to ask me as well, I had this one thought about it. If you are playing a computer game that we've mentioned before, and it's a simulation, there is one controlling factor that you can't escape. There is something that always leaves its imprint, leaves an artifact within that simulation, and that is the processor speed.
Okay.
Because things can only, within a simulation, run at a maximum speed before things glitch out or it just can't go any faster.
Like, so a good inference on that would be, for instance, streaming.
Yeah.
Streaming, you get the buffer wheel of doom.
Yeah.
Because it's getting too much traffic.
If you were playing a computer game,
yeah,
you could find, if you searched within it, you would find that you were going to get to a limit. That limit is the processing speed of that. We live in a universe where the fastest thing that we know exists is light. Could it be that is the processing speed of the universe we live in? Because it's hypothesized that nothing can go faster than light.
Again, that asks the question of how far
is that the artifact?
does the simulation go? That's kind of what I want to think about.
But every simulation would have its maximum speed that it can render at.
Yeah.
And in our reality,
the constant is
light.
The speed of light. Yeah.
Can't go any faster than that. So is that our processor speed?
So are you suggesting that, for instance, if we managed to crack the speed of light,
we could break out of the simulation?
That we could break out of the simulation?
Who knows?
If there is a simulation to break out of.
So this is it. We're going to round this off now, listeners. Okay, you brought this one in, so do you want to ask me?
Okay, so do you think the simulation is real?
Simple answer, no. We are entities living within our carriages. I do not know what happens to us when our vehicle ceases to exist anymore. But I don't think that it is a simulation in the sense of the concept of what we deem being a simulation.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty just reasoning there. I mean, to me, it just seems a bit too fanciful.
Yeah, but there are people that believe it. And for me, it's I really want to kind of get to the nitty-gritty and understand the concept more than actually realizing that, oh my god, I'm in a simulation. Yeah, I mean, you've got to take it back to the flat Earth, kind of.
Yeah.
You've got to say to yourself, why are they so convinced the Earth is flat when there is so much evidence that's just logic?
Yeah.
That says no, it's not flat.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I think there's just too
many variables.
Too much that tells us that it is not a simulation. Or is it?
Well, that's kind of it's something that's so almost complex that it's something you can never fully explain away.
Well, that's why.
But in explain away, you can't prove it either.
Well, that's why in my research that I briefly did on this subject, when you told me that's what we were going to do today, that's why I looked into it, and it was one person's theory that the irrefutable proof that we do live in a simulation is that signature of the processor speed, and in ours it's the speed of light, and that is our processor speed. We can't go faster than light, which means that everything under that is simulated.
This has been
Try to get your head around that one.
This has been a really quite cool conversation.
Yeah, it's been a great thought provoker. It's one of those ones that you could sit round the table at the pub.
You can digest it for hours.
Yeah, and I liked it. I really enjoyed this episode. So thank you, Zach, for bringing in this one.
I'll say, yeah, we should probably bring more.
Yeah, we'll do some more conspiracy theories in. There are
some
really weird and wacky ones out there.
Yeah.
And this one is kind of, on the edge. But
it's on the edge, but
people love talking about it.
It's believable.
Well, see how popular the Matrix films are. See, we've already discussed popular, pop culture,
Yeah,
the different
yeah.
where it appears. So who knows? Maybe we are. Listeners, if you've got any opinions on it, let us know.
So, before we end this podcast, it's that time where we delve into the hat of mystery that isn't very mysterious anymore, because we've only got one topic left
Yes.
for our exclusive episodes available to our patrons and YouTube members.
I kind of feel we've come to an end of an era now, because I've got the hat of mystery in front of me.
Yeah.
I can see this one thing in there. And then that's going to be it. There's
That's
going to
it.
be no more after this week.
Unless we
episode.
top it up.
No. I think we'll.
That's run its course.
It's run its course. So I'm going to test you.
Oh, crikey. Okay.
Okay. Here we come. The final one.
Come on, I can get it.
See if you can get it on the nose.
Okay.
Episode 16.
Ooh. Episode 16.
Okay, you're going to have to be fast on this. The time is ticking.
Mars?
Nope.
Oh, that was episode 18.
Doo-doo.
Give me a clue.
Doo-doo.
Give me a clue. Come on, give me a clue.
Well, okay. Are you in Paris?
No.
Are you in Rome?
No.
Are you in London?
No.
So if you're not in Paris, you're not in Rome, and you're not in London, you must be somewhere else, yeah?
Yeah.
And if you're somewhere else, you can't be here.
I'm confused.
That was a clue.
How is that a clue?
Well, it means you're not here. So if you're not here, you must be somewhere else.
Okay, that's a head. My processing power. I don't know.
Well,
Sorry.
all to do with places,
Places.
finding places.
Oh, of course, geocaching.
Geocaching.
Oh, wow, that wordplay.
Finding
that played with
hidden
me.
places.
Places, yeah.
That's it.
Okay, geocaching.
Geocaching. There we go.
We always promised that we'd do more geocaching stuff. I don't think...
We really do need to pull our finger out.
Yeah, we need to set up one of those caches.
Yeah, we should do the Now We Know Show podcast cache.
Yeah, that's the thing we're going to have to do in one of our
And then
future
see if the
episodes.
listeners can find it.
We can have a big discussion in the exclusive.
There we go.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes.
This is a big, good glitching goodbye from Buzz. See what I did there?
Yeah, I did. And that's a potentially simulated goodbye from Zak.
Goodbye.
For now. You can find the Now We Know Show podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. Keep up to date with everything ZWP on Facebook and Instagram, or visit the Zak Wylde Productions website at www.zakwyldeproductions.com. And remember to join us on Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access content and exclusive episodes.